mentioned, there are some special events coming up. On October 9, I guess about a week, we've got a extra credit lecture you can tune into or come to, where you do some hands-on stuff with Burp and Collie. And there's a free conference you can get in free virtually. And I'm going to have lockpicking here near Halloween, October 29. So if you haven't done lockpicking, come here physically on Tuesday, October 29. And people can do lockpicking for extra credit. That's always a big hit. The pen testing students all want to come in and do that anyway. Anyway, so there's some things you should know that are coming up. And here we are at Module 6. So let's take a look at this stuff. So this is documenting the evidence. And one thing, of course, is you can get evidence from a service provider. You can subpoena cloud providers like Dropbox, like Office 360, Microsoft 365, and otherwise, you can have a preservation order, which orders them to preserve records, and then you can have a subpoena, which forces them to hand over the stuff. So these are people that have wire or communication services, and they retain these data typically for 90 days. They typically do inform the suspect that they're being investigated. Now, with national security letters, which are available if you're investigating terrorism, you can actually order them not to tell the person under investigation, but normally they do tell the person they're under investigation. And so when you go to a crime scene, you have to secure it. First thing you do is put up that yellow tape and lock the door and such, make sure nobody is wandering in changing things. Then you take video or photographs of everything so you know exactly how everything was laid out, and then you gather the evidence. Photograph and document everything, make sure you get all the connections of cables and such so you can correctly connect things up, then you take them back to the lab, and keep documentation of everything you find, serial numbers and the exact description. Then you seize the evidence and you follow a proper protocol. If it's wireless devices, you isolate them. You put them in a paint can or in a Faraday bag so they can't reach out to the network because you don't want anything changing. In particular, you don't want remote wipe commands coming in and erasing the evidence. And therefore, you connect it to a external power supply, because when you put it in a wireless blocking container, it will turn the power up to the maximum level trying to reach the cell phone tower. So it'll tend to drain the battery rapidly. All right, and there are some various best practice guides. It's pretty common sense stuff. So you take notes about everything, photograph everything, and then tag everything and record it. And then you have a chain of custody form saying, at this date, on this time, I took possession of it, here is my signature, and that means I can go to court and testify. I went in there and I seized the stuff, I placed it in a secure container, and then I took it back to a locked evidence room and put it in there, and nobody had a chance to mess with it until it was handed off to the next person who also signs it here, and they can also testify saying nobody messed with it. If you don't have an unbroken chain of custody with people who can testify, then the evidence loses most of its value because you don't really know that it is intact. It could have been modified. All right. And so then you have a computer worksheet which will detail the thing exactly, CPU, RAM, operating system, serial numbers, all the ports and things like that. So you know a complete description of the computer you have. And then the hard drives. Typically investigate the hard drives extensively, like we've been doing with autopsy. The evidence from a hard drive gives you a whole file system. And then you have more information about a server, make and model, serial number, and all this jazz, recording everything about the device you seized. And then there are tools that will help you make reports. Autopsy has a feature that will make a report, and you have to write your own report with your conclusions and such. And there are various apps out there to help you organize your report. One real important thing is the time zone. Machines can have the time zone set to a different thing, especially if your investigation covers a large area. And you have to make sure you kept track of the time, and the time, of course, changes with daylight savings time too. So you have to keep track of all that, or you'll be wrong about the time when things happen, and that's really important because usually you need to prove that a certain person was using a computer, and if you have the time wrong, you might have the wrong person in that room. So that's a big issue. Daylight savings time is really a problem. It's not uniformly applied even everywhere in the United States. Some places don't use it and some places do. So you have to be very careful to make sure you get it right. And then you make a report. And this is, the report has a cover sheet, which is a summary in non-technical language, which is usually the only thing the judge and the jury will look at. They will look at the summary, which is what did you do and what did you find in plain understandable English. Then all after that comes the technical pages, and the only person that will look at that is the opposing forensic examiner, which will be the output of your forensic tool, list of files, list of folders, technical information. All right, so you have to understand that. It has to be very clear, and it has to be easy to understand by a non-technical person for sort of the executive summary part at the start. Microsoft vulnerability reports are very good at this. If you look at them, they have an executive summary that says what happened, how important is it, which systems are affected, and what should you do. And then it has details later. So it's a good example of how to do this kind of work. The technical part should be accurate enough so someone can recreate the analysis. That's just like scientific papers are the same. You have an introduction that explains what you found, and then you have enough detail so someone can repeat the work, which is what you want. So the cover page identifies you and dates and such, then a table of contents is helpful, and as I say, the executive summary, which is in plain English, not technical, saying what did you find, what did it mean. Then you can have a biography of the investigators proving your credentials, purpose of the investigation perhaps, and then the methodology, saying what you did. I investigated this drive, this computer, I found this and that, and then electronic media analyzed, and the findings, which will include an automatically created report from your forensic tool, which will probably be very long and boring and full of file names and dates and sizes and stuff like that. All right.
Are you familiar with any repository where we can retrieve one as an example?
I don't have one. There are some on the internet, though.
So typing on internet. Okay.
Yeah, there are some out there.
What keyword should we use? Report as a digital forensic investigation?
What's that?
What kind of keywords?
Yeah, I would try with that. And like I say, you get a pretty good idea from Microsoft vulnerability reports. They're structured the same way.
Okay.
And yeah, but it's a good point. I might be able to find some examples. Let me make a note, see if I can find some. It's a good idea. And so anyway, then you got exhibits and appendices, photographs of objects, files printed out of files, and you may have a glossary, which is good to help people understand the technical terms you use. So that's the written report. Now, the expert witness is a very special person in court. A normal witness can only testify what they saw and heard. If somebody told them, if they heard something from another person, that's not evidence. But the expert witness is the person whose opinions become evidence. Because you're an expert, you can state an opinion, and based on the credibility of the expert, that now becomes evidence. So that's why you're an expert, and that's why it's very important to have your credentials there. So there's an expert witness on the prosecution side and on the defense. All right, so they explain this. So the goal of the expert witness is to educate the jury. That's why they often have teachers for this. It's pretty much the same job. You are trying to take some complicated technical thing and explain it to people who are not technical. So teachers are good at that. The thing that is not good about teachers is they tend to ramble and go and expound upon things, and you never want to do that in court. The attorney is guiding the case. He will ask you for something, and you're supposed to give him the answer to that question and then stop. If you go rambling off into other topics, you're very likely to bring up something he doesn't want brought up. And that's why they have to rein you in. So the expert is also there to persuade them. You are there to explain what you found, and you are there to persuade them that you really are an expert and you know what you're talking about. So you have to have a written report, like I say, typically, which will have a complete statement of all the opinions you will express and the detailed reasons for them. And you're the only person whose opinions matter in court. Only an expert opinion is evidence. If somebody else has an opinion, that is not evidence. All right, you have your qualifications, all publications, often in the past 10 years. That's why normally a resume is only 1 or 2 pages to get a job, but the people that are expert witnesses have a resume that is like 30 pages, everything they've ever done, because you just want to have a big, thick pile of impressive stuff, years of accomplishments to convince them that you're the real expert. List of other cases and a statement of how much you were paid. Those are all required. So you have to make sure you're up to date, make sure you know what you're going to say. You are allowed to check your notes at trial, but you will not impress people if you've forgotten important things. You should make sure you are rehearsed on what you said. I remember I was basically doing forensic work, although they didn't know it, and I made like frivolous comments on a document, which later was going to go to court, and my boss got mad at me. I didn't know that. I said, I tried this again, phooey, it didn't work. And I wrote that on a document. He got so mad at me because that was going to court. I didn't know that. So it was clear that the person that doing the work was sort of childish and undisciplined, and that was not a good look. So anyway, you can be asked hypothetical questions. For example, they will often say, maybe the computer had a virus that did the bad thing and the accused did not do it. And then the expert witness can say, well, you can't say that's impossible, because that is possible, but you can say, in my experience, I have never seen this happen from a virus. I do not believe, it's my opinion, that this was not done by a virus, but this was done by the accused doing the work. And that's why you're the expert. The expert's allowed to have an opinion, and that will have weight if you have convinced people that they should trust you by having an impressive resume and presenting yourself as knowledgeable and competent in court. And here they mention the thing I said, don't go beyond answering the question and don't volunteer additional information. That's what's difficult for college teachers. And also, be very careful not to get pulled out of your realm of expertise. I was very impressed by Dr. Fauci during COVID. He would constantly be interviewed by the press, and they would say, how's the vaccine coming along? Is it going to work? And he would say, well, it has this % chance of working. And then they say, should they have a vaccine mandate? And he would say, I'm not the politician. That's not a scientific question. I'm not qualified to answer that question. I can just tell you about the medical facts. And you have to be like that. You have to remember what you know and don't let them lure you into saying foolish things that you're not qualified, that you're not an expert in. So that's an important thing to know. And if you let people bait you like that, it decreases their credibility in you. And this is what Kamala did to Trump at the debate. She tricked him into saying stupid things that made him look bad. And they will try that on you. That's fair game. It's your job to not let that happen. You got to be courteous to everyone, and always be clear about everything. Don't use words like probably. This also works in financial work. I learned from my boss. He said, no, don't estimate. He said, always don't produce anything until you're sure, because if you say probably or this is an estimate, they will never remember that. They will just remember the number, and they will hate you if the number is wrong. That was an important lesson for me. In science, you can say that. Yeah, but in financial work or legal work, you cannot say that. Nobody wants to hear your guess. They don't want to hear anything until you have an answer you can stand behind. And of course, units of measurement matter and such. So that's a summary of this stuff. Let's try a Kahoot. This is chapter module 6. I should have a Kahoot for that. Let me see if I can get it up. All right. Mod 6 looks pretty good. I might even have the right class. Give it a shot. All right, so what is accomplished by taking photographs? documents the scene so you know what was there and how it was all connected and all that before you seized anything. All right, what prevents file deletion for 90 days? Yep, that's a preservation order, ordering you to preserve the evidence. All right, what part of a report lists the college degrees of the examiner? That's the biography. And by the way, if you guys go to court, you take this class, and when they say, do you have formal training in forensics? You can say, yes, this is formal training. You know, that's one thing that strengthens your resume. All right, what part of the report includes photographs of the seized objects? I think I spelled seized wrong. I don't know if I checked to see. Well, those are the exhibits, of course. Good. All right. You'll have to tell me more of a name to get points, I imagine.